Hello, the interwebs. Welcome to our little book movie club. This is Read, Watch, Vent, and this is our Dune episode. In case this is your first time with us, we have this little book club. The three of us ladies are writers, actors, otherwise various multifaceted creators, and you can find us all over online. But we get together and we talk about books and the movies that they have been made into, and then we vent about whether we actually liked it or not. This is the Dune episode, which we have been looking forward to for a while now. So there's going to be a lot to discuss, and I feel like there's a lot of I don't know, among us, I liked Dune, but I was never an ultra fan. But I feel like there may be people watching who are like, ha! So if you have really strong feelings about it, please let us know in the comments. We would love to engage with you. Be kind to everyone around. And yeah, that's all I have to say. But no, I'm really looking forward to this discussion. But before we get to that, do you ladies, Emily, you have a show that is coming up for the holiday season. Would you like to tell everybody about that?
Indeed, I do. So I am working on the Polar Express train ride, and they have these in various cities throughout the U.S. I'm in the Oklahoma City one. It's very fun. It's not just for kids. It's for everyone to just really get into the holiday spirit, feel special, find the true spirit of Christmas. It's very wholesome. And we're actually on a train, which is fun. And you get hot chocolate, which is great. So yes, Polar Express OKC or something like that. Just Google Polar Express train ride OKC. It's very fun. And if you're not in OKC, check out the ones near you because they will be a great time.
Should be. It's nice to have a holiday where people can actually go out and do stuff. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was talking to a 10-year-old. She's nice. She's my friend's kid. And I was like, what do you guys usually do for Thanksgiving? And she's like, did we even have Thanksgiving last year? And I was like, oh I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's so different for kids because so much of a chunk of their life has been taken up by these past couple of years. Wild.
No, here's the thing is that I spent a lot of time around children during the coronas. Children are terrifying.
I feel like we had this discussion when we were talking about YA stuff.
Listen, children were already terrifying, but after a year of lacking socialization,
Gen Z is going to be fine. They're really durable.
Yeah.
Durable. Ha! But uneducated, not as much.
They'll be fine. But social things aside, let's talk about Dune, this massive, giant story that was made into a massive, giant movie. And everybody has lots of opinions on it. We're going to, in case this is your first time with us, we usually start with the book, discussing themes, what we liked, characters, all that stuff. And then we'll move to the movie. And then did either of you ladies end up watching the one from the 70s?
I watched the original with Sting. That was the one that I watched. I have some opinions.
We'll talk about some of the earlier adaptations and how this one stacks up. We're gonna mostly be focusing on the brand new one. Yeah. So the book. Ladies, would you like to try to summarize Dune in 30 seconds?
Oh, golly.
Ready, Erin, go.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got a really, really sandy world. It's desolate. Nothing grows except for spice. Spice is apparently a drug / makes the entire world go around. And these folks who were from a place that actually had water moved to a place that doesn't have water. And Paul and his mom are supercomputer brains because of special training. And then his dad dies. And then he goes and lives with these desert people. And then he becomes their messiah. And he gets even more of a super brain. And he falls in love with a girl, and instead of calling him my wife or my girlfriend, they call him his mate. And it's okay. It's weird. Well, Yeah.
All right, that was 30 seconds. Emily, your summary of this story in 30 seconds.
Finish it out.
Okay. I'll talk more about themes a little bit, I guess. So there's a lot of like politics surrounding this spice, and I feel like it relates a lot to like in modern times, like the fight over oil in the Middle East, and basically like spice is it controls everything, so it like helps them to navigate time and space, but it also makes them very smart. And so it's all just like a battle over control of this very necessary but very rare resource. But not only are they fighting against each other, they got to fight the giant sandworms.
Or do they? Or do they?
Or do they? Those are the true heroes of this book. It's one of those things of like, what is it? Enemies turned lovers, except enemies turned pals. Sandworm pals.
I feel like there's some sort of psychic connection happening on a deeper level. I feel like Emily, I feel like power is at the heart of this story.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole thing, we've got the politics, we've got the family, we've got the Messiah story, but ultimately it's about it's a story about how we as people, and there's this emphasis on, are you human? Are you actually a person? Are you worthy of that? How do we use our power? Do we use it to control others? Do we use it to amass more power? Do we use it to unleash a people to try to free themselves in the bloodiest way possible? How do we use that power? And is there any good outcomes for that?
And how does one gain power? What gives one power?
And the reason I would centralize my summary on power is because you have this epic, especially in the first book, you have the conflict between the two houses, which is like there's a conflict between the Harkonnens, who originally had Dune, and then the Atreides, who got given Dune. But then there's also the Imperial level, and then there's also the Fremen who live on Dune, who are actually on the ground. And all of these various interlocking power structures are really just kind of wreaking havoc. And it's a very interesting take on what happens when you are part of that system.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Yeah, I see a lot of similarities to like Mad Max, Fury Road, and like that kind of thing, like the power dynamic, especially with very limited resources. You know, obviously in that movie, it's like a very dry landscape, and there's a lot of power associated with like the natural resources and who has control over them. And I feel like that's seen a lot in this movie too, because and they have these like cool future suits that transform their sweat into like rehydration. But not everyone has that. And so it's like this dynamic between the natives who have lived there for forever and adapted to the people that are coming in and taking over and like, you know, kind of controlling everything, and also wrecking everything. And then, you know, the new people that come in, and like Chloe said, all of this controlled by the emperor, who is afraid of losing power. So he's pitting these two houses against each other.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting pulling him into context with some of the other, like, I don't know that I would call Tolkien necessarily a contemporary, but they were certainly like right alongside each other in terms of fantasy and sci-fi really being a really big space to play out current political situations.
Would Bradbury be in there with them?
Probably.
Bradbury.
I feel like at the heart of science fiction, you either have for most stuff, you either have this optimism of like looking to the future, like I think this is what the kernel of what I see, and I'm going to cast my vision for the future. Or you have something like what Tolkien did and what Frank Herbert did, where they literally just create a world because they want to analyze what's happening right now. Tolkien wanted to analyze his feelings after coming out of World War I, in part. And he also wanted to like just redo the history of England and the UK.
We're talking Hobbit, right?
Yeah, The Hobbit.
Lord of the Rings.
The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion. All of it is like a giant commentary on history. And this one is also a commentary on the history in the Middle East and the conflicts that were happening in the 50s and 60s.
I think it's very interesting because, yes, there was one of those things in not only in the movie, but also in the book where it was like, where exactly are we? Are we in the future? Are we in medieval times or are we in the Middle East? And it was a weird combination of all of them. Weird's not the right word, but like if you watch the 70s movie, it's very
contemporary feeling.
Yeah, it's just based on the costuming. It's like you have no idea where you are, but somehow it all works together. But talking about those like different worlds, and what you were saying earlier is something that is very, very interesting. I think the connection between Tolkien and Frank Herbert, that's his name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even like Ray Bradbury and Brave New World is that it goes like when you think of the future, you think, oh, there's always like elevated technology, or in Tolkien, there's magic.
Yep.
And so you think of it as folks being more advanced, more
exactly, more advanced.
However, in their behavior, all of it is like far more animalistic. Like they have lost the humanity in a lot of it, because a lot of it is always about like fighting and instincts and just the basic need for survival.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the conflict between I think Frank Herbert was pretty explicit in his desire to examine like the dichotomy between feudalism, which is very local and very medieval and very personal and brutal, and imperialism, which we tend to feel like is more advanced because all the great civilizations were imperial in some way or another, right? Rome was an empire, China was an empire, the Mayans were an empire, like that top down. But the emperor is still brutal, just like the Fremen. He's just impersonally brutal. The Harkonnens are still brutal, possibly worse than the Fremen.
It's the emperor is very much, because the emperor has an entire planet that is devoted to being a prison. The emperor is very much, I think, brutal from afar.
Yeah,
because he has such a long reach. Versus like the Harkonnens, they will kill you to your face, and anyone, literally anyone,
or maybe not. Or maybe they'll just try to have someone assassinate you and then be like, oops, so sorry, he's dead.
The great thing, it's not a great thing at all, but there's like a scene where the Baron is literally going up to every... Is my sound messing up?
No. It was, but I think it's good.
Okay. Where he's legit going around the room and being like, okay, so I just killed a guy in there. How about you, guard, go clean that mess up? Oh, yeah, and you, guard, go kill that guard when he comes back. And then, hey, you were talking to this person, so go kill them. And then you kill all of those people there. And it's like, dude, that's a lot.
The view of humanity is that it's totally disposable, which is in contrast to what the Atreides house is ostensibly saying, which is these people are not disposable, as they're like trying to sort of stand up for the Fremen, and yet they are part of this imperial machine that is coming to the planet that is functionally just like stripping everything of value out of that planet.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but they're given like a good rap because they're like, leave the spice, save the men. But it's also like, guys.
Well, and ultimately they're weak. They lose. They go in without a real plan, knowing that it's a trap.
Yeah.
And lose. And that I feel like is actually pretty true with history. Like we can see rulers and we're like, he's a really great guy. Oh, that did not go well.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the dictator in power?
Oh
Oh no, we don't have our table. It's broken. All through history.
Oh God. Oh, damn. Oh.
I don't know. Like I feel I it seems like that may also be coming out of like specifically looking in the Middle East, where the West has meddled in those conflicts for freaking ever, and we do not have a good track record of making it better.
Right.
Like Russia went into the Middle East to try to take it over. Didn't do anything that made it better. The British went in. Lawrence of Arabia famously kind of actually didn't even really want to be a part of it. And he was also an inspiration for some of these stories. Which, if you haven't seen Lawrence of Arabia or read the book, those are also worth a read if you're interested in this like piece of history. A read and a watch. The movie still holds up really well. It's a fabulous movie. And then like we recently went into the Middle East and spent 20 years accomplishing nothing.
Right.
It just doesn't. What do you do?
You mind your own business.
I feel like it's this whole theme of like, like the white savior complex of like, we are civilized, we're going to come in and save everyone and make everything better. But in reality, you have these two very conflicting ideas of how civilization should work. And when they collide, it does not, it often wreaks havoc, I would say.
Yeah.
So, how do you think the book handles the moral judgment of how do we treat people when we are in power? Like just looking at the different ways that how the Fremen have people. We see Fremen leaders. We see how they lead. We see House Atreides and how they at least aspire to lead. To be perfectly honest, I feel like they're just a tragic example of just good people being weak. And then the Harkonnens, who are just brutal.
Yeah. But even the whole thing that is fascinating, I'm not sure, is that Emperor Brutal, he's taking an entire like bunch of prisoners and turning them into killing machines. You have the Harkonnen that are just like, hey, that guy walked past me, kill him. And then there was even a line about the Fremen where it's like their children walk around with knives in their belts and they're just as fierce as everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the Atreides who are like trying to be diplomatic and, think with all of your special thinking powers and be nice and save people. And they're the ones that end up dying.
And birthing the most radical thing of all, which is Paul.
Yeah.
Because all of his visions of the jihad come true. And it's brutal and bloody, but it's for a better cause, ostensibly.
But it's interesting because there's this whole war over power, like who has power, the Atreides, the Harkonnen, the Empire, or like the Fremen who are like trying to rebel against all of this and get them to leave them alone. One of Paul's big lines is like, the people who like power comes from being able to destroy, because they're talking about destroying the spice. So it's like power comes from the ability to destroy. What was it? Destroy what? Or just destroy?
I think just to destroy. He's like, if we destroy the spice, we basically, he's like, we're going to blackmail the galaxy.
Yeah. Because we can destroy like the most important thing. But like, that's what killing is, just destroying resources, except those resources are human beings.
Well, and when you make, I think the political lesson there is when you drive a people to desperation, they got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
They're just gonna burn it all down, or give them what they want, or they're gonna burn it all down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How we haven't talked a ton about the Bene Gesserit, but they are fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when I was younger, I've read some of the other Dune books because they're more prominent, and their interplay between the Empire and what's going on is actually fascinating. And as someone who really, really enjoys interesting portrayals of religion inserting itself into politics, I thought the Bene Gesserit were fascinating. And also I was like, I want more of this. Oh, it's so insightful because it's a whole different kind of power. It's a back end power where you lead from behind with like pushing.
I have a rant.
Oh,
a rant? Go rant.
Okay, so they start off like right off from the top. They're like Bene Gesserit, only women, bad bitches, like human mind control, like only they can do it. They're the only ones strong enough to like suffer through pain, and like they're so powerful. They're so powerful that everyone is afraid of them. And like it's one of those things where like they call them all witches, but it's never at least made blatantly clear. Like I know the Baron in his part where his nephew was like, hey, you should get yourself one of those. And he's like, no.
Don't want it.
I don't want it. But here's the thing is that it was his choice of like, I don't want it versus like usually in situations where it's like, I don't like what you do. Let me exterminate you. So they're too terrified of these women to kill them off. However, because those women they're like manipulating bloodlines. They are
making up entire religions on planets that have never met them just so that they could maybe crash land there one day and be safe.
They're insane. They're insanely cool. But everyone's like, you're really freaky. But here's the thing. I was like, yes, female empowerment. Yes, bitch, you go. Absolutely. And then 2 seconds later, they're like, but alas,
a man will save us all.
The man come, because the man is the only one that can experience, the thing that the women are all so afraid of that they can't go to. Only a man can do it, and he has to come and save the world. It's like you were doing so good, and then you were like, only a man can do this.
Here's my thing, though. I would push back on the idea that they were awesome and a great picture of female empowerment, because there's nothing healthy about how they do what they do. The one person that I would say is potentially a good picture of female empowerment is Jessica, because she is actually kind of trying to extricate herself from essentially her cult. Right? And I'm realizing that my power is just like blinking at me. So hold on one second. But all the other women, they're empowered, but they're empowered not for themselves or for the personal good of anybody. They have this broad vision that they have just arbitrarily decided is the best way. Which, ultimately speaking, how is that any different than the emperor being like, well, everybody needs spice, so this is what we're doing. But the women go about it by, instead of like actually asserting power like the men, where they're just like, I kill everybody, they backdoor it and they lie and they manipulate people. But Jessica actually forms a true relational bond with with Duke Leto. And they have an actual relationship. They have an actual connection of love and care for each other that I think might have been the one thing that could have like helped the situation had Leto trusted her enough to try to let her in on what was going on. when they found out that there was issues. But she does so much, and the reason that I say that I feel like there's a moral judgment there on them is that there's so much damage to Paul by virtue of her making him this new thing.
Mm-hmm.
He is her religious legacy, and he is scarred by that, and he becomes a warlord because of it.
Yeah, he's the one, so he has the prophecy to fulfill, and that's his whole point of life, basically.
And feel free to push back on me, Erin, on that.
See, I have a thing when you say that they lie, where I'm not sure if that's they lie necessarily, because everyone knows what they're doing. They know what the voice is. They have this ability to use their voice to get people to do what they want, which, controversial, but also, yeah.
Men use guns, so yeah.
Yeah. So persuasion is fine. But yeah, I feel like the ways of the Bene Gesserit are not as secret as they make it out to be, maybe.
Ways, yes. Objectives, absolutely opaque. Half of the Bene Gesserit don't even know what the hell they're doing.
Okay, I'll give you that. I will give you that. But the other thing that I thought about, and I'm not sure if this has anything to do with the conversation, but when you were like, Paul was scarred by the legacy, I'm like, aren't we all scarred by our parents being the legacy? How is this any different?
I'm just remembering that scene and it really kept me in the book and in the movie. I thought it was a great adaptation where he gets his first couple visions when they're trapped in the sand. Mm-hmm. And he looks at his mom and he's like, what did you do to me? Mm-hmm. No! I can't even tell what's real or not right now. And this is your fault.
Yeah.
And now I have to make decisions for the whole freaking universe.
Right. If you hadn't trained me in the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Because they keep talking about how Jessica wanted to have a son to make him into the thingy. So it's not so much a destiny thing. I thought it was all a destiny thing.
There's a lot of destiny. There's a lot of interplay between what is destiny and what we pick. Let's get to the movie. Mm-hmm. Let's get to the movie. Likes, dislikes. I feel like we have to start with the world building because a lot of the first 30 minutes of the movie is just completely without words and is just world building and is beautiful. Oh my God. If you have the opportunity to see it in the movie theater, I would say go do it. I didn't, and I kind of regret not.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, it's hard to take a very, very large, dense book and adapt it to a movie. That's just the reality of it. So I do appreciate that it was split into two parts. So there will be a part 2 coming later that will cover the second or the last third kind of the book. Yeah. So I think, and I read a lot of stuff about the director doing the movie adaptation, which apparently he started, he had the idea to do it when he was 14. He read the books, which is cool because I think a lot of times with book to movie adaptations, you just get a director who comes in and wants to make a buck off of the adaptation. But this guy was obviously a fan, which is cool. And
a lot of really reference for the material.
Yeah, really wanted to stick to the Bible, meaning the book, and get a lot of things right there. And there's also the fact of adapting it to or contemporizing it with themes and characters and whatnot. But I think in terms of world building, like you said, Chloe, it is really visually beautiful, and there's a lot of good visuals going on there.
Yeah, I felt like the initial just omnipresence of how ominous the Atreides getting sent to Dune was great. Like just the first couple scenes, everything is dark and gray, and it's clearly like this great empire, and they're this kind of loving family in this beautiful palace. But there's just this sense of impending doom that's in everything that you look at and everything that you see. And they get all the important like conversations in from the book, and a lot of it is just lifted word for word, which was cool. But you have this weight of, oh no, something, I don't even know what, if you haven't read the book, you're like, I don't know what's going on, but it's bad.
Yeah.
No.
Like it's presented as this, oh, the emperor has chosen this family to go and take on this, you know, great honor. But in reality, it's like a death sentence, basically.
Yeah. And they're totally aware of it.
Yeah.
Erin.
That was surprisingly chill. What?
No, go ahead. I was like, you're making faces, Erin. Tell us what you're thinking.
I watched the 70s one and
totally different tone.
It was a lot. It was a lot. Oh my God. It was one of those, it was why I was thinking, like, not just listening to it, but looking at the 70s one. It's like 50s, Middle East, medieval times, modern, like alien stuff, all crammed into one. And I was watching this and I'm like, the special effects on there, I'm like, to someone, this was mind-blowing.
Well, okay, so to put this in context, this movie came out just after, like a couple years after Star Wars.
Yeah.
So this is contemporary technology, and I mean, I feel like a lot of contemporary visual elements, borrowed from that.
They started off with a whole different tone than the book, I think, because they started off with,
I think both movies started off with a different tone than the book.
Yeah,
because the book is very literary and like history heavy.
This one, they like started off wham bam with the Emperor when like we barely got to know the Emperor. Like we knew the Baron and Leto, the Atreides dude, but we did not know the Emperor at all. And then they roll in. This is something that I like, is so funny about older movies, is the fact that they roll up with the Emperor, but then the first thing you see is this giant train, like black metal, massive thing that they bring in, and it's a tank with this weird like alien worm that can talk but has like weird nostrils.
For those of you who are wondering, this is the 70s movie that she's describing. This is the 70s, the beginning of that one.
But it was one of those things of like watching this and going like, oh, this is different. And then just taking it down to, of course, like the actory, like movie analysis thing where I'm like, this is a different tone. Special effects would have been top of the line. Also, there is no way that you could move that thing in through a door. And just, it had Sting in it. Like, and if you have seen anything with Sting in it, you get the vibe of like, this is odd. This is very odd. I have a question. Okay, did y'all pick this up in the book? Because I did not pick this up in the book, that the Baron was like floating around on stuff.
Yeah.
I did not pick that up. And so on the Baron, when we show the Baron in the 70s movie for the first time, he's this gigantic fat dude with like boils and goo all over his face, getting and then he just hits a button and he flies up in the air like the jet puff guy from friggin' Ghostbusters. On like it was just so strange. And he also had this thing like he was having some thoughts about his nephew Sting. Like it was just a lot where I'm like,
So that's actually, I'm glad you brought them in and their like the 70s portrayal of him, because I agree with you. I thought it was weird, but I also thought that it was unsettling. It was like in your face unsettling, which was, I think, it's very heavily implied throughout the book, the way the Harkonnens are written, that they're like height of like Roman debauchery, kind of uncomfortable. And I felt like, while I loved a lot of things about how the new one adapted everything, and I loved that they pulled a lot of the really important conversations and whatnot, I feel like there was such a missed opportunity with taking a chance to actually make the Harkonnens like the villain, and make this first episode really about the conflict between the two houses, which is really heavily, like, that's the conflict in the book. And make the Harkonnens actually like evil, show us not just the machinations that are on like the high level with like the military being brought in, and with, you know, the stuff with the emperor and the subterfuge and the all of the traps that they had set and all that, but actually like show us their personal interest in just being terrible people for the sake of power. Like, I think Baron Harkonnen had like 5 lines in the whole movie.
Yeah, the movie is just much more. Go ahead.
What is it? I think it's a shame. He's an amazing actor, and he had so many great, like, in every scene he had this great like visual moment, like when he like pulls up in the first one, I was like, oh, chills. But then he didn't say anything. And when he confronts Duke Leto, they cut most of that conversation. When he has Leto in the room with him to kill him, they cut it. And I was like, no, I want a villain. And I felt like the movie lacked a villain. There were obstacles all over the place, but there was no villain.
Yeah, the movie is much more focused on Paul and Jessica's perspective, mainly Paul and his coming of age and his fulfilling the duties of his father and becoming a man and figuring out his vision and his visions and his powers and becoming the Messiah and all that stuff. So I feel like it is much more focused on his view of the world than sort of the inner workings of what is actually happening on the planet.
I just realized something that, like, it's just a literary thing that authors tend to do when creating cultures, is that I just realized, like, the Fremen are based off of the Middle East and the Harkonnen are based off of the Romans, and I think the Atreides are based off of like medieval.
The British.
They're
the British. They're the civilizing empire who's nice, but not really.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That just kind of blew my mind, because I was like, I didn't think of that. But bravo.
Yeah. No, I think for the movie, that the lack of a villain was my biggest sadness. And while I really appreciated Timothée Chalamet and everything that he did with his performance, I wanted more of Leto and Jessica, so that we could set the stage for what's coming, because the next movie is about Paul coming into his own as he becomes the Muad'Dib. This movie was about everything that pushes him into that and makes him make the decisions. And so you've got to give him stuff to make decisions about. Show us his dad and what his dad did and didn't do. So that why is he doing something different than his father? Because he is not doing anything like his father did. And he has the visions and whatnot, but go ahead.
Yeah, we didn't get a whole lot of Leto in the movie. And when we did, it was sort of him trying to be the diplomat and trying to, hear out the Fremen and, see what everyone's perspective was. And
he was very
passive. So I agree. Yes, he was very passive. So I agree that it would have been interesting to see how Paul would be so different from the way his father led.
I just wanted more of Jessica.
Also that. I wanted the tragedy of Jessica and Leto's like love story ending the way it did, because
Like,
that is so poignant.
honestly, I think Jessica is like the most interesting character to me. It's like she goes through the ringer. Also, how about the idea of a baby like being imbued with ultimate power from birth?
Can we talk orphan horror movies right now? Just like
We have Messiah Complex. We have the
creepy possessed child. I'm really excited to see who they cast for the little sister in the next movie.
Elia, yeah.
Alia.
Alia. Which another thing.
Oh my god! In the 70s movie. Okay, so they had her dressed.
Like a nun.
Like it was like a mix between a nun and a Muslim woman, and it was very strange. And they had this tiny little girl, but they used a voiceover actor that was clearly an adult.
Oh my gosh!
Kid voice. It was so disturbing, and not in like it was if not more disturbing than the gross Baron. Like it was bad.
Oh man!
When you hear this coming out of a little girl.
Oh gosh!
No, no.
Let's see. How did we feel about how this story in general has aged? Because the new adaptation had a different perspective on the source material than the first adaptation.
I feel like for a couple characters, they definitely got updated pretty well. I think Lady Jessica had a lot more power in this movie. She was more in control than she was in the book. It was much more focused on her and Paul than it was about Leto. And she had control of the voice, and she was teaching Paul about it. And she was obviously the experienced, powerful one. And so I think she just had a lot more just control over her own life and situation in the movie. They also updated I'm blanking on the name, but the doctor who they meet, women, not the one who
the planetologist.
Kynes.
Yeah, I loved what they did with Kynes. I thought that was really interesting.
It was, yeah. And I read some stuff about how, it really didn't, because in the book, the character is male, and it really didn't change the character to gender bend it. And it just makes a lot more sense. She also had a much more heroic ending in the movie, because instead of just dying of like dehydration in the desert, she sacrifices herself and calls the giant sandworm over to her and ends up killing all like a bunch of enemies and herself in order to save Paul and Jessica. So much more heroic ending for her.
What's the name of the what's her name? See, Paul's girlfriend.
Chell.
Wait. Chani?
Chani, that's
Chaney.
Chani. Yeah.
I think Chani.
I was surprised in the book how, I was very surprised in that she became it seemed like her importance was supposed to be far greater than it was.
I think there may be more, because remember the book that we read that this movie is based off of is part 1 of 6.
Oh God.
6 other books as big as this. And I'm pretty sure the whole series covers like 10,000 years of human history.
Oh my
Jesus criminy Christmas.
Yeah. So everybody becomes important.
Yeah.
Everybody simultaneously becomes more important and way less important when you have a piece of history that's that big. which is interesting. That is a fascinating challenge as a writer.
Mm.
And it's an interesting perspective on, and I think it goes back to what you were talking about earlier about like kind of not being sure like what time we're in. Like, is this the future? Is this the past? Just because there's the technology feels so analog. And the only computers, the advancements have been made in the mind. That's it.
Yeah.
I heard from somebody, and maybe someone in the chat can like correct me on this, but I heard from someone that was actually someone gave him that as a challenge because he was wanting to write a sci-fi story, and another author was like, "Can you write a sci-fi story without the tech?"
Interesting.
And so while Star Trek was happening and Star Wars was happening and we're having these supercomputers and spaceships and whatnot, he's like, no, all of the tech is powered by people. People who are high. But apparently, also, I was reading that he pulled that because he had a lot of experiments with shrooms. He himself was very, very well tasted. Like he grew them himself and wanted to incorporate that into his book. He was like, what happens if the world like actually opens up to this higher experience that we have made so taboo?
It's like microdosing nowadays.
I have why are all of like the big writers on drugs?
They have lots of money. They can afford it.
Because it opens you up here. I know that. But like everyone is on drugs.
I mean, most great like geniuses are also suicidal and depressed. So
Chloe, are you on drugs?
No.
You're a good writer.
I mean, are we comparing me to Frank Herbert now? Thanks.
Welcome. You gotta write a play in 48 hours. Jesus.
I love in the movie whenever
that was entirely a joke. It was humorous.
I know.
I love in the movie whenever Timothée Chalamet first smells the spice for the first time, and you just know that man is high.
I loved that scene. I had so much. I actually laughed. I was like, "Oh, he's so high," because it's such a serious moment in the script because everybody's about to die, but he's just like. Yeah.
He's just chilling, and they're like, "Bro, get in the ship."
I forgot the whole planet is cocaine.
Yeah, he's like, "This smells good."
Like, how is everyone high and also dying? Like, it's a well, I mean, that makes sense because drugs are poison. I keep saying these things, and then I realize that's already how it is. It's not sci-fi if it's true. Isn't it, guys? I'm losing it.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's a lot of book to take in.
It is a lot of.
It's a lot of book to take in.
But here's the interesting thing: is that I think the reason it is so long is not necessarily because the plot is moving along. Because here's the thing: is that they in the 70s movie. They didn't have to break it up in parts. They just kind of like took the plot and went like this, and I still felt like I wasn't missing anything.
I was frustrated at the pacing of the 70s movie because the whole back third of the book is like the last 10 minutes. And I was like, that's an interesting part though.
Yeah, it was very strange. But hey,
we get a whole movie of it
from Sir Patty Stew.
What? Oh yeah,
Patrick Stewart was in the 70s.
You know what? Replacing Patrick Stewart with Jason Momoa is an interesting update and tells you a lot about where society has come.
That's true.
Royal Shakespeare Company Guide to Marvel Aquaman. I felt like that was entertaining. And I thought Jason Momoa did a great job, but I also thought that they unfortunately cut his character so that it wasn't nearly as important, which was a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah.
I just like that Gurney's like a killing machine and also is like, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, I know. Gurney literally just got like to fight the heck out of Timmy, and then a few random lines, and that was it.
Oh my God. Can we talk about the names really quick? You've got Paul and Jessica.
That is my whole vent part. Oh my God.
His
It's
last
just
name
so
is
silly.
Idaho. But
It's
then
so funny.
you've got all the other names.
I feel like that is such a trope in these kind of sci-fi movies or books, because you have to have something that attaches you to the world and makes you think, okay, this is like a weird, different society that's very different from us. But you also have to have names that people can remember and latch on to. But I feel like this was done to the extreme, because you have such cool names, and then you have Paul and Jessica.
As soon as they said it, Jessica, I was fine with, but it's like Jessica Leto, and then they named their kid Paul.
So goofy to me.
So the language stuff, if any of you guys out there are like linguophiles, you should look into what he was doing as he was doing language with this, because he actually he didn't do as much as Tolkien, but he did a lot with the language. And what he was really trying to do was figure out how to incorporate what he wanted, like the elements of the Middle East and elements of imperialism in contrast. And so I think that's part of the reason why we have these weird like juxtaposition, like super Latin, super Western names, and then also other things. Super Latin, but also ones that have they point towards old mythology. Like Leto is the lion. That's like it sounds Latin-ish. And
UA is something.
What?
UA,
yeah. So we have these flavors of, I think, where he's like pointing people, and it's weird and it's disjointed a little bit to someone who's used to everything being in one language. And I think that's where we're coming from with, as like American readers in particular, we're just used to a world where everything is English. We don't really deal with all other languages, period.
Right. There's so much Arabic influence in the language. So it is very different for our ears and our eyeballs.
But yeah, I do. I feel like I felt like that when I read it back in high school too, when they were like, Paul. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I felt like that about Hunger Games too. Where they're like all of these fancy names, and then Pita. And I'm like, what? Pita.
I legit
like Peter, but British.
No, that's exactly what I think happened. Is she was like talking to someone who was British, couldn't come up with a name for the guy, and then they said Peter, and she was like, Pita.
He's a baker, you say? Let's name him Pita Bread.
Yeah, that could be it as well.
I think that's it.
Both of those are just excellent reasons to name your character.
Well, ladies, last thoughts on the book or the movie?
Do we like it or do we not like it?
I liked the movie better. I did like the movie. I think it is cool when these sci-fi movies are darker than, and especially when they're in the mainstream. Like this one was a lot darker than like a lot of the Star Wars movies. It was a lot grittier than some other really popular movies of that genre. So I like that it gets a little more intense and has some more intense themes. So I enjoyed that. And I thought, we had some really interesting performances from really good actors. It had a really solid cast. Lots of very attractive people wearing very attractive things. I have to say it. I appreciated it. So thank you for that. And so I thought it was cool. I thought the sand monster or the sandworms looked very crazy and cool, and it was very nice to look at cinematically.
Do you want to go last, Erin?
Sure.
You don't have to.
No, I was just like, would I continue? Like, I wouldn't continue reading the series. I would listen to it on audiobook. Sure. But was I like, this is amazing? No, I wasn't. I wasn't overwhelmingly impressed. Which
It
is
wasn't your favorite movie or book?
everyone was like, oh, dude. Well, here's the thing is that I was trying to go in chronological order to start from like earliest to newest. And then I went to watch the new one and I'm like, I thought it was on HBO.
You thought what?
I thought it was on HBO. And I started searching through all the streaming services and I'm like, I saw it. Where did it go? And then I was just like, I'm going to pretend like I'm not even going to pretend. I'm just going to say nothing about the new movie and y'all will take care of it for me.
So between the old movie and
it
the
went
book,
on HBO back literally a day ago.
Oh God, I didn't like either of them. And it wasn't like I hated them, but it was like, who was the actor? Who was the actor who played Paul? Because he was one of those where I recognized him.
Yeah.
Dune. Who was he? Who was he?
I don't know. We can look it up.
I'm looking it up currently.
When you find him.
Kyle MacLachlan. MacLachlan. He's Irish.
He's been in stuff since.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've seen him before.
Is he in the? No, he's not in the new one. I saw Dune and it looked kind of like the new poster, and I'm like, did they put him back in it? Oh my God! No, they did not. They did not. But Paul was really weird in that one. He was very
feminine.
Yes.
He was very feminine, which was an interesting call. I enjoyed the book. I liked the movie better. To be perfectly honest, just from like my personal experience, would I go back and watch it again a bunch of times? No. And will I probably read the book again? Probably not. It's incredibly influential, and the movie was absolutely gorgeous. But for me, the movie had too many pacing issues, just because it was so long. And I kept wanting, I knew that there was other stuff in the book that they could mine instead of just doing another montage of trying to walk over the sand. Or adding 2 or 3 minutes to the fight. Like cut a little bit of that, not even a lot, just a little. You have a 3-hour movie that you got okayed.
Oh my God.
Like, give us more of the characters that make this world so powerful. And give us less of just the world building and a little more of the characters so that we're actually emotionally invested in what's happening. Because I feel like that's actually the biggest drawback for me. For both the book and the movie, intellectually, fascinating. Emotionally, I am not connected to the story. And so I would like probably just personally movie B because I just feel like it had pacing problems. And the book, I mean, I'd have to I can't really do anything other than an A- because it's literally one of like the foundational pieces of literature. But I feel about it like I feel about a lot of foundational pieces of literature. I'm glad I've studied it, and I'm probably not going to read it again.
The writing in it was great. Like I listening because I listen to all of these because I'm driving 3 hours, like 6 hours. Pardon me, it's there and back. But listening to Frank Herbert read his words, I'm like, this is good writing. This is good writing. Like.
And if you haven't read it and you're looking for something different, it hits differently than contemporary sci-fi and fantasy because it is so history based and there's a lot of philosophy in it. and there's a lot of like inner thoughts of the characters that you're not normally privy to.
Oh, that was a weird thing about the 1970s one. So much of it was
Lots
just
of voiceover.
whispering.
Yeah.
Voiceover, which is weird. Sorry.
We don't do voiceovers very much anymore. It's kind of fallen out of vogue.
Yeah.
No, but it wasn't even anything like good. It was just repeating what was said. Or just deep the food was said.
I want Aaron saying all of the subtext for all of my movies from now on. Just like a picture of Aaron in the corner. This is the bad guy and he is punch. He doesn't care about any of you.
That would be a dream job for me.
You just have your sassy opinions just in the corner.
Number one, no, I have done this thing before where I was an opera freak senior year, and I made operas far more entertaining for myself by literally getting drunk and filming them on my phone and commenting on them. And then because COVID was boring as hell, I edited it into a video. Like multiple part videos. It's just my commentary on an opera.
Well,
is
everybody,
completely
follow
stupid.
Aaron's TikTok for more opera commentary.
Oh,
Now you have to.
Here's the thing is that I put it on YouTube and it is definitely on unlisted. If y'all want to see it, like I'll send you the link. But I'm just saying it's ridiculous because I am ridiculous.
Wow. I mean, your affinity for opera probably helped you get through this because this is definitely an opera level epic. It is larger than life, fabulous. If you haven't seen the movie, I do recommend going and seeing it. If you're a cinephile, like just do it so that you can discuss it with people because I think it's probably an important piece of science fiction filmmaking. And if you're frustrated with it, go see the most recent Blade Runner because of the two movies from this director, Blade Runner is fabulous. So if you want to see him at the very top of his game, like what Dune could have been.
Ooh.
What Dune could be.
Yes, true. He has another movie. So I'm excited to see what he does with it. I will tune in 100%. I will probably not watch it twice, but I will tune in because I want to see because this was it was worth my time. I liked it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, hello, Lawrence. You're catching us as we sign off. We are going to be taking a hiatus for the holidays. So we will not see you until January. You can follow us. I am going to be streaming on Uncanny Pros on Twitch. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us, it's Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. Just search for Uncanny Pros. We play on Tuesday nights. It's going to be a little bit sporadic throughout the holidays, and we're kind of doing one-shots because we have lost one of our cast members to a work thing. And then the three of us will be back in January or February with spring programming. So if you have thoughts, let us know. You can find me at ChloeLiz05 on all the social media handles. Let me know what movies are coming out that you want to discuss, what books are coming out that you're excited about, or even stuff that's already been out for a while and that you kind of want to rehash.
Absolutely.
Ladies, do you want to shout out your handles really quick so people can follow you?
I'm at Emily Wallenberg on everything.
I am at Aaron Noble, except I am
Only one N.
I'm conserving ends, so it's Aaron Noble. So it's ERINOBLE.
Fabulous. Well, we will see you guys in the new year. I hope you have a lovely Thanksgiving. Tune in to Uncanny Pros tonight. I will be streaming at 8 with all of my other fabulous players. And we will see you guys in the New Year's.
Yay!
See you later. Thank you for tuning in.